Fort Sumter, the Secession Crisis, 1860 to 1861. This is a fast-playing and interesting game that's a lot of fun, and we're going to learn how to play it here today on Legendary Tactics. Now, I covered this game with a couple of playthroughs last year, but I realized I hadn't actually walked through the tutorial, and I thought it might be useful to do that with you today. And just teach you how to play this game. Again, it's not a tremendously complicated game, but there's a few little, rules and stuff here and there. But I think once you get the gist of it, you'll see how it works. It's actually a pretty straightforward game. As it says here, it's 2 players. One side is the Unionist, one is the Secessionists, and you play 3 rounds, basically playing some cards, and then there's a final crisis phase at the end. There will score victory points. You can see beside the Secessionist and Unionist title here, we've got the numbers, and that's how they're tracked on the digital app. And whoever gets the most victory points wins. So for this tutorial, I'll be the Unionist, the blue side, and the Secessionists will be the tutorial AI. So when you first start a turn, you get 4 strategy cards and 2 objective cards. And we need to pick an objective card right away. The other one goes back into the objective deck. So if we look at these cards, you can see if there's going to be a map space. Here, let me just minimize this. You see Fort Pickens here. There's a space. If we control it, then we can remove up to 3 tokens from armament spaces, or remove up to 1 token from any space. And you can see there are different suits, I guess you could call them, for the spaces. So the red spaces with the cannons are the armaments. You have the secessionist ones, which are the stars, the political ones, which are the yellows, and the public opinion, which are the greens. So if we look at this objective here, if we play the Deep South space, you can remove up to 2 tokens from Secession, the spaces with the star, or remove 1 token from any space. So the tutorial wants us to pick this one, so that's the one that we're going to pick. You just drag it into the middle. And the opponent also picks an objective secretly, and they're revealed at the end of the round. So the idea is that there's extra victory points on the table and some extra benefits, but you don't know exactly where they are, and that's part of the bluffing of this game. And I love it when you already control a space, which is actually the objective that you are going for, but you're not calling attention to it, so your opponent can be easily led astray. So we get 4 strategy cards. We'll play 3 of them. And it's always whoever has the most victory points goes first, and when there's a tie, the Unionist goes first. So if we look at a strategy card here, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, there's a number. That's the card's token value. And the color of the box indicates who can take the event. So in this case, it's a Unionist event. And if you take the event, this is what you can do. There's a card effect that comes into play. So in this case, I can add up to 3 tokens to armament spaces, or remove up to 2 opposing tokens from 1 armament space. And then finally at the bottom, there's an upside down part that's used for the final crisis, and we'll get to that at the appropriate time. So Gustavus Fox is a Unionist event, so you can choose if you want to use the token number or the event when it's your event. If it's the other sides, then you can only take the token value there. So because this helps out our objective, we're gonna take it. So we're gonna drag it into the middle, and you can choose to play it for the event, play it for the value. We're gonna take the event because it's better for us. And these are again, all the spaces, and you control a space if you have more tokens on that space than your opponent does. So you've got, again, the 4 suits, and each suit, each set of 3 in each suit is considered a crisis dimension. I wish there was a better way to explain what that is, but that's what Mark Herman, the designer, chose to call it. And so if you control all 3 of the spaces, you control that crisis dimension, which gives you a victory point at the end of each round. So generally speaking, you want to have, if you pick a color a space to play in, you want to kind of control the other 2 if you can. So the event allows me to place up to 3 tokens onto armament spaces, and they come from this either the token pool or from these tracks here, what they call the crisis tracks. So at the beginning of the game, you have to take it from the crisis track, but if any cubes are returned to you, they go back into the token pool. And you can see that once you break through into the next level, then you get some bonus cubes that you can then place. And then there's the final crisis stage, where if you've used up a lot of tokens, the problem is whoever breaks the barrier first basically will get 4 tokens, but they lose a victory point, and the second player gets 2 tokens. So you get a lot of tokens if you get to the final crisis stage first, but it's not necessarily the best, because you do lose victory points, so you have to weigh that equation. So I'm going to place 2 tokens into Federal Arsenals and 1 into Fort Pickens, which is my objective. And those came from those spaces on the crisis track. My opponent has played the Republican Party from their hand, so if we take a look at that, it's our event, so they're not going to be able to do this event, but they can place 2 tokens as part of their play, or what their play is. And you can always use that token value regardless. Some of the events will be playable by both sides. It'll have a gray and blue section, so we'll take a look at that later. So he's going to go basically both tokens into the newspaper's space, so they control that. Now I should point out there's one important space that's more equal than any of the others. And Federal Arsenals, you see the white border states, newspapers, and Washington. Those are the best of the crisis dimension suit, and so we'll explain more about that. So this one we can only play for its value because it's a secessionist event, so we'll do that, and we'll play 2 tokens anywhere in the map. So we'll go into Fort Sumter for 1 and Federal Arsenals for 2. And yes, that's the term I was searching for. So the ones in the white border are called the pivotal spaces. And so they're the most important space in the crisis dimension. So once the player's played their 3 cards, then whoever controls a pivotal space can move or remove up to 2 tokens across all spaces of that crisis dimension. So if you want to control this one, the pivotal space, because that's going to allow you to potentially remove enemy tokens or place more of your own. But it doesn't actually. It can be any tokens. So depending on your strategy at that moment. So we're going to aim for control of the armaments dimension through control of the Federal Arsenal space. And that's our goal. So we can redistribute a couple of cubes if we need to. Makes it harder for your opponent to get control of that. The AI plays Florida secedes for the event. We'll take a quick look at that. So they can add up to 3 tokens to secession spaces or remove up to 2 opposing tokens. Now we don't have any tokens there, so they're going to add 3. So those are taken from the secessionist crisis track there. And we're down to our last card for the round. Remember, there's only 3 rounds played in this game, so it's not a terrifically long game, or it doesn't need to be. The 2 cards in hand both have 1 value, so you could use either of them to place 1 anywhere on the map, or we could take the event. So if we look at Sam Houston, I can't really look at it, but it's only going to allow us to place 3 tokens in Texas, and so that would block the opponent from controlling the secession dimension. Now you have to be careful because the opponent is going last in this case, so they could counter that move potentially. So the political dimensions are wide open. Here's the other event. So we're going to add up to 3 tokens in one political space. And as I said, if we get control of Washington, which is the pivotal space, then we can redistribute our tokens if it makes sense at the time. So we're going to take the event. We're going to place all 3 into Washington, and that'll be our move. Now, by playing those 3 tokens, I breached the next escalation zone, the next zone in the crisis track. So I'm now in escalation, which actually gives me 2 bonus tokens into my pool. And so you'll see it. There's a bit of a flash there, and then there's no penalty or anything. It's just you get a couple of extra tokens in your pool that are available. So. So the the secessionist player, because its score is tied at the beginning, always gets the last strategy card play of the first round. And then after that, whoever has the most points goes first. So they play the plantation class card. Okay, and they can just play the 1 to go into Fort Sumter if they like, or they can take the event and add up to 2 tokens to secession spaces. So they could play into that, but the problem is that because I control federal arsenals, I can just remove that cube and get my control anyway. So that'd be a wasted move. So he's going to take the event and basically lock down the secessionist, the secession crisis dimension for a victory point, and in doing so, breaches the escalation zone. So. He gets a couple more added to his couple tokens added to his bonus pool over here. And so the last card that we have is set aside. You'll see it's flipped over, and we have an armaments in the final crisis part of this. And again, I'll get to that soon. And now that all the strategy cards have been played, it's now time for the pivotal space actions. So as I said, you can redistribute. You can move either up to 2 tokens among spaces or remove up to 2 tokens from that crisis dimension. So in this case, we're going to spread the tokens around from Washington to get control of Montgomery and the northern state houses. That gives us control of that crisis dimension. That's worth a victory point. So that's a really good one. We're going to move 1 token to the Fort Sumter space just to, I guess, even out the control there. So, and we're not going to play another cube because we want to make sure that our opponent can't easily come in and take the federal arsenals away from us. All right, so we're all done. And so they control the newspaper space, but they've only got 2 tokens, so they can't play into state assemblies and abolitionists. They may want to normally if they had another token there, so they're not going to move. Now in border states, there's no advantage again to doing that switch over, so they're just going to pass on that. We move on to the crisis dimension, and so this is basically the victory points are added up. So my opponent gets 1 victory point for the secession, control the secession crisis dimension. I control the political dimension. I also control the armaments. And so I get a victory point for that. And now we check the objective card. And of course, I have control of Fort Pickens. If you control that objective space, you do get a victory point. So let's see, he controls newspapers, so he gets a victory point as well. So this is going to be a wash. All right, and it's 3-2, so a very close game. So now we can implement the event, and so I'll play, and whoever has the most victory points takes their objective card event first. So we can either remove 3 tokens from armament spaces or remove 1 token from any space. Well, he's not in any armaments tokens, so we'll just take him out of Texas just to mess with him. And that goes back into his pool. And then he removes me from Fort Sumter with newspapers. And that is the end of turn 1, round 1. So I think you'll see it kind of speeds up from here once you kind of get how this works. So again, 4 strategy cards, 2 objective cards. And if we look at this card, if we control northern state houses space, which we do, then we can remove up to 2 tokens from political or public opinion spaces. That's potentially pretty useful. This one requires control of the state assembly's space, which is currently uncontrolled. So we'll just take this one because we already have an advantage there. As I said, sometimes it's nice if you pick a spot, like northern state houses in this instance, there's nothing to call attention to it. So you can just kind of, unless your opponent moves into that space somehow, you've got a good cover. There's nothing that calls attention to it. And in fact, if he were to move into northern state houses, likely I would counter that saying, well, I need to control that crisis dimension for the victory point. So the opponent doesn't need to know you don't have to give away what your objective card is. So again, we'll play the 3 cards. And so we're going to replace, we're going to use regular army, the event here, to replace units in the armament space. We're going to make sure that the federal arsenals is all reloaded. And so we've got 1 token left. Louisiana secedes is their card play, and they're just going to take the event to place 3 tokens in the Deep South space. So that's interesting. Okay, so we're going to use this for the we're going to go all in with the the armaments play. We're going to do 2 tokens into Fort Pickens and 1 into Fort Sumter. That breaches the tension zone in the on the crisis track there. So we get 3 bonus tokens. And now we got to be careful because we don't want to breach the final crisis zone accidentally because it'll cost us a victory point. Now when a player breaches the tension zone, if you look here just below, it says Peace Commissioner, and this is kind of an interesting space. So when someone breaks the tension zone, the other side gets the Peace Commissioner, and they can place it on a space, and wherever the Peace Commissioner is, there's no tokens that can be placed and none that can be removed from that space. And so it's a nice, if you're trying to lock down a zone, that's a pretty good way to do it. There are a few events that allow you to move the Peace Commissioner, but for now anyway, newspapers is locked down, and so it's pretty much guaranteed that that newspapers is going to be under their control. So they play Secession Conventions as the second strategy card. They're going to take the event to get into the other 2 spaces in the public opinion dimension, and that makes sense. And the opponent just breached the tension zone there. Now, since I got to the tension area first, the tension zone first, I don't get to place the Peace Commissioner. So once the Peace Commissioner is down, he's in place unless a card is played to move him later. So if we look at the 2 cards, this is a secessionist event, so I only get 1 token. Seizing federal armories will allow me to place up to 4 from any. I can either move up to 4 tokens from any armament spaces to your token pool. The reason why you might want to do that is if you already are well in control of the armament spaces, you may want to build up a little bit more of a token pool so you don't breach the final crisis zone. Or you can add up to 4 tokens from your token pool only to secession and or public opinion places. So we're going to to take the event But we don't want to, breach that zone because of the, the fact that it's valuable. So the second player to breach the zone will only receive 2 bonus tokens, but there's no victory point penalty. So it's a little bit of a game of chicken. You generally want the opponent to breach the final crisis zone first. So we're going to remove some tokens, and it says up to 4. So we'll just replace 3, and that should be enough to buy us a bit of time to avoid breaching the final crisis zone. We'll just click on the done icon there, and make sure that we're we're not going to pull off too much control, because we do still need to maintain control of those spaces. Now you can place up to 4 tokens into secession and public opinion places. So we're going to place 1 there, a couple here. Sorry, 3 here. Sorry, I kind of misread that event, I think, in the beginning, just as I was zipping over it. So you remove 4, and then you can place them elsewhere. So, but if there are any cards to remove tokens off the map, then that's why you would want to do it, is because you may want to postpone the entering final crisis, or maybe even entering the tension zone, and so you get a chance to place the peace commissioner. It's up to you. So we have 1 card left, and so we're not going to be able to control all of them, because he's going to definitely do something. So he plays the strategy there. Removes 2 of my tokens from the Fort Sumter space, which kind of messes up our plans to control the armaments. But anyway, that's his choice of play. So anyway, pivotal space bonus. Now we control the political dimension, but we only have 1 token in each space, so we'll just sit tight. Because don't lose control of the political space. Now the armaments space, because we've got a lot of tokens. We got 3 tokens in the federal arsenals. We can move 1 of them to Fort Sumter to regain control, and then we'll decline moving the second token over. Now the opponent used the first move from the secession dimension, the border states here, to take control of Texas. So because they control border states, they can reposition cubes within their crisis dimension. So, and that's what they chose to do. So they'll get a victory point for that. And then because the opponent controlled the newspapers, the public opinion pivotal space. So the opponent chose to remove 2 of my tokens from the abolitionists space. That because we share control of the abolitionist space, then there's really there's no victory point there for my opponent, which is good. It's perhaps some questionable plays on the AI's part, but again, this is just to illustrate how to play. So the opponent gets a victory point for the secession crisis dimension, and I get control, because I've controlled the political and the armament space. I get 2 victory points for that, and that's good. Now we'll look at our objective cards. And again, we control northern state houses, so we get a victory point for that. And our opponent definitely has control of deep south, so that is a victory point for them. And so we can remove up to 2 tokens from political or public spaces. Now we can't remove them from the newspaper's space because of the peace commissioner. So we're going to remove from the state assemblies and abolitionists space there. So that's good. Now my opponent chooses to remove my only token from Fort Sumter. So because there's no, I don't have any presence, I don't have any tokens in secession spaces. So they just, the AI opted to just remove me from one space, and that probably Fort Sumter was as good as anywhere else. Maybe I would have chosen Washington myself, but whatever. So at the end of the round, again, if both players have breached the final crisis zone, the game skips the remaining rounds and goes straight to the final crisis. In this case, so far, there's no one that has breached the final crisis zone, so we'll move on to round 3. We both have a pretty decent amount in our token pool here. So we get our objectives, and we take a look at it. And so this one here is the abolitionist space, which we control somewhat. And the Washington card, if you play this control the Washington space, we can remove 2 tokens from the political or public opinion space. So this one is abolitionist, has a better event in some ways, but it's only 2 from one space. This is from any space. So we're going to choose this as our objective. And because we have the most victory points, we'll go first again. And we have, in this case, we've only got one of our own events. The rest are secessionist cards, so we can only use the token value. Both of just from a strategic point of view, 2 of them have 1 token value, and they have the same public opinion final crisis dimension. So it doesn't really matter which one we play. Now, we're going to play the 1 value card, holding on to some of our higher values, just depending on what happens. We're going to boost Washington, so we want to make sure we've got that locked down to get our objective. The opponent plays Beauregard from their hand and places 2 tokens in Fort Sumter as a result. So now we have the Peace Commissioner's event here. So we can use this to place it in Washington or Fort Sumter. Now, why would we put it in Fort Sumter? Our opponent's there. So we want to place it in Washington. And this is where it can be very useful to have the Peace Commissioner. Assuming the opponent doesn't have any cards to move the Peace Commissioner, then we can use this event to move the Peace Commissioner to Washington, lock that down so we'll get our objective, and that locks in a victory point there. So that's good. Southern senators resign. So this is actually very good because they could have removed us from Washington without that Peace Commissioner in place. Instead, they're going to add 3 tokens to the public opinion space, get control of the public opinion crisis dimension, and that's going to be potentially worth a victory point in the scoring of the round. So we have 2 secessionist events remaining in hand. This one is just worth 2, so we're going to take it, and we're going to place 2 tokens here. We've got a very narrow edge. We still control federal arsenals, so we could potentially reposition or remove those tokens and regain control of Fort Sumter. He plays the Jefferson Davis card is the last one, and they can remove up to 2 tokens from 1 secession or armament space. So that one could be an issue. Alternatively, it could be played into, say, the political space, or they could take the token value and do something different. But I have a feeling, they're just going to add to Fort Sumter. Either way, they gain control, so nothing wrong with that. Although the 2 tokens came from the 6 and 5 space, so that means that the opponent has breached the final crisis zone, and they get 4 bonus tokens, but they lose a victory point. So I'm happy that happens. I'm up to 6 to 3. We're going to take a look at the pivotal space bonus here. Now I control the political space, and now I can't move any pieces in or out of the Washington space, so there's nothing I can do really anyway without giving up control of the space. So I'm going to decline that one. Now I also control the armament space, so I can remove 2 tokens that the opponent just placed in Fort Sumter, and we'll just put these over here. There we are. And he's going to boot me out of the abolitionist space. Okay, so our opponent gets the secessionist victory point. We get the political dimension victory point, and our opponent gets the public opinion one. Because the control Fort Sumter is split, we do not get the armaments victory point for that control of that crisis dimension. We reveal Washington. We get a victory point, which is great. And our opponent reveals Fort Sumter as their secret objective. Neither player controls that space, so no victory points are gained. So that's great on our part. We were able to fend them off. Because we won that event, we can remove up to 2 tokens from the political or public event space. So we're going to basically take away from newspapers and from state assemblies. All right, now the final crisis is here. So this is a little bit different. It's quite simple, but we basically set up our deck in any order. And we reveal 1 card simultaneously at a time. And so only the information at the top there, the color, is the only thing that we're really looking at. There's none of the event text or anything has any value. So we're going to just order these here. So we're going to go public opinion, armaments, armaments. All right, and we've ordered them together. We've both ordered them, so now we'll get an effect based on whether the final crisis dimension location on the cards is a match. Okay, so let's take a look. So there's no match. When there's no match, because we revealed public opinion, they revealed armaments. So when they do not match, then each player, starting with the player with the higher score, can move up to 2 tokens from any map space or their token pool into any combination of this final crisis card's color. So we chose public opinion, so we can move tokens from in this case, our token pool would be the best spot to go into newspapers and gain control of newspapers. So that's going to be a problem. Now they placed armaments, so they're going to reinforce Fort Sumter, and they control Fort Sumter now. All right, second revealed card is Sam Houston. That's ours. That's the armaments. Our opponent reveals Stephen Douglas, public opinion. They don't match again, so we can place our tokens. So we're going to counter the move because we placed armaments. We're going to place 2 tokens from our token pool into Fort Sumter. All right, and the opponent can now place into a public opinion. They're going to go take to newspapers and retake that one. So we do not have control of the public opinion dimension anymore. And the last one is armaments and armaments. So they match. When the cards match, then each player must remove one of their own tokens from those colored spaces or remove 2 of their own tokens from any map spaces, and they go back into the token pool. So it's not a good thing. You have to remove tokens from either armaments in this case or any space. So we've got an excess. We've got an extra one in the federal arsenal. So let's take one from there. And the opponent has tokens in Fort Sumter, but removing one of them would give you control of it, which is worth 1 victory point. So what they did is they removed 2 tokens, one from the Deep South space. Sorry, I misspoke the rules there. When you choose one from the armament space, in this case, if it's matching the card, then you only have to remove 1 token from that space or 2 from any space or spaces. So we just removed the 1 from the federal arsenals, and that satisfied that condition. The opponent didn't want to remove any tokens from Fort Sumter because that would have given me control of it. And Fort Sumter has a special scoring thing. If you see here, it says 1 victory point in final scoring. So Fort Sumter is worth a victory point if you control it at the end of the game. And so they removed 2 tokens, one from Deep South and one from Abolitionists, which is here where they had extra tokens. And final scoring now. Let's see how we did. We've got a little bit of a lead here. So basically, in the final scoring, you just score the dimensions again. My opponent has the secession dimension, as he has for most of the game. I still have the political dimension, which is great. And no one controls Fort Sumter, so there's no victory point there. And I don't control the armaments dimension, and my opponent does, because of state assemblies being empty, doesn't control public opinion. And so the only other scoring is that if there's at least 3 more tokens in a player's token pool than their opponent's token pool, then you gain a victory point. So my opponent has way more tokens in their token pool than I do, so they get a victory point for that. And that's it. That's the final score, 9-7. And I guess I win, although I'm pretty sure it was a predetermined result. So that is a quick breakdown, about as fast as I could. I know it took about half an hour, but this is how to play Fort Sumter. And as I said, it's a great game that's got a nice little bit of strategy, but it feels very light, feels very accessible. And I think if you have some gamers in your life that aren't particularly into heavy games, I think this might be a good kind of compromise with them. So anyway, hope you got a lot of value out of this video. If you did, please like, please subscribe down below, and please add your comments. And we look forward to seeing you here next time on Legendary Tactics.